All right, my friends. You know, the world has changed in profound ways. There is a certain phenomenon that is sweeping the world and kind of changing how all of us live and how all of us just perceive reality itself. And there is no way to sort of beat around the bush here or to start with anything else really, to start our stream with a discussion of anything else. And it's something that um, it's something that can affect all of us, and it's something that it really is no mystery, like what I'm going to talk about. Um, and I think Brian especially knows exactly what I have on my mind. What really sort of is driving a kind of a global re-examination of who we are and like what it means to consume a beverage. And of course, I'm talking about Mountain Dew Zero Sugar, released at the beginning of this year. And I feel really kind of an amazing addition to the Dew family of beverages that has already kind of outperformed itself with the regular um, Mountain Dew diet. And the diet, and then there are also like different energy drinks, but now we have Mountain Dew Zero Sugar, and naturally, I mean, this one specifically is really crying out for 5 pony rating. This one because it has 68 um, milligrams of caffeine, which is about 10 more than 10 more than the regular Dew, and really I think like 28 or 20 more than an average soda, Brian. So really, the taste itself is, um, as we know, like a citrusy soda really nicely blends in with um, artificial sweeteners anyway. And now with all this caffeine, you know, you drink two of these babies and it's like an energy drink, but for a fraction of the price.
It's a beautiful thing, man. It's totally changed the paradigm of diet sodas.
It changed the paradigm of history. Everybody's thinking about it right now. Everybody can't get it out of their heads. And like,
Truly, this is as Francis Fukuyama would say, you know, now is the end of history.
yes, the end of like the history of carbonated beverages as we know it. Um, so yeah, you know, I do actually like it. So I mean, if you're interested in a kind of a morning energy drink, this one has it. Again, like you take two of these babies, you're gonna have more than your average energy drink in caffeine content, but for the fraction of the price. But anyway, how about that coronavirus? Also something worth mentioning, I guess. Um,
I really just hope that they follow up with the code red zero.
yeah,
That's what I'm looking forward to.
right. Yeah, I mean, then we'll start. Maybe at that point, it's going to eclipse another kind of a global pandemic in the priorities of the stream. But as far as like coronavirus, of course, a lot of people are in quarantine right now, but not Ivan. I actually fucking drive coronavirus because I transport samples and to labs from hospital to hospital. And the other day, like they said, "Hey, this is coronavirus." So I did transport coronavirus. Well, at least like somebody who likely has it, or like a number of samples. But yeah, so it was interesting to drive alone in the car at night and have the contained presence of this virus that originated in China a few months ago, and kind of interesting juxtaposition, like to carry this virus in this contained form that has killed thousands of people and will kill thousands more. So, I'm there on the front lines, walking through hospitals. Will I get rewarded with sex and cuddling? Only Brian can decide. It's in your hands.
I don't think it's gonna happen, man.
Rejected once again. Rejected once again. So, yeah. So that's pretty much it. So my stepfather is coughing heavily, and he has been sick for the past 2 weeks. So his doctor said that it's probably not coronavirus because he doesn't have a temperature and he's not sneezing. I frankly haven't heard this anywhere else, this kind of a designation. Or here in Ohio, actually, they have a unique way of certifying doctors. You actually, primarily what you need to do is to memorize the Arby's menu from start to finish. Right. If you memorize the food offerings, you can then you then become a healer of men in the state of Ohio. So I think that there is
more Bronco Berry sauce, please.
Yeah. So I think that there is a possibility that he has it. I don't know, but mostly how this concerns me is in the fact that, like, I could theoretically be a carrier without showing symptoms of it. So again, I'm not saying that he has it or anything like that, but I'm just concerned of contaminating other people at the hospital. And there are a lot of older drivers who work for our company, and so I was a little bit paranoid about that. So I was wearing gloves, and then one of the hospitals gave me a surgical mask. So I was happy to receive it. So you see, I touch my face a lot in the car because part of the aspect of being a single man, of course, is chain vaping, and then like caressing your face for comfort, which I do, and slow stroking yourself. So between these, like the woman, the physical presence of the woman is replaced. And so I basically touch my face continuously because I vape and because I continuously like have some sort of a soothing, the touching of my face continuously. So in this context, it makes sense to wear gloves when you go into the hospital, right? And then desensitize the gloves and then desensitize your hands, right? Makes sense?
Desensitize?
I mean, whatever, with the alcohol and stuff.
Like sanitizing.
Sanitize. There we go. Yeah, so that makes sense. And then I was given a mask at one hospital where they already have coronavirus. And I was going to other hospitals, huge hospitals in Cincinnati. So it seems to make sense to wear a mask also, right? So now I come in with the mask and gloves into these hospitals, and everybody fucking looks at me like I'm a complete fucking asshole. You would think that I was in that fucking beekeeper outfit. Everybody thinks that I'm a complete fucking piece of shit. And at one of these hospitals, this was confirmed because when I dropped off something at the pharmacy there, the woman thought I left, and she went behind the door and started really laughing and guffawing at this. She's like, "Can you believe he's wearing a mask and gloves?" So yeah, I don't know. I guess
not too smart out there in the Ohio.
Yeah, yeah. I was just kind of surrounded by morons sometimes. And again, like I was primarily like wearing the mask because I didn't want to infect other people. Like I know none of this is like any kind of a magic solution, but my primarily concern is that I'm going from one hospital to another. My stepfather is coughing like right now, literally. So, but whatever. I guess I'm a big kind of a douche. So what's going on in your neck of the woods?
Well, I was just curious. Can I ask you a question? Here, look.
Yeah.
Like you got the mask on, right? Did you ever consider, like, if you're talking, was there like glass between you and them?
Or at the pharmacy there was, yeah.
Oh, okay. So that's a little bit different. But it'd be cool if you like ripped the mask off and like, I'm wearing this for you, and like coughed in
Yeah.
their face or something.
Well, it's like it could be a road rage thing where it's like if I get into something with another driver, I can like pick off a fucking plastic bag and threaten them with coronavirus.
It's kind of funny because I'm not sure what it is about myself. I'm not sure what my particular like problem is, but I actually really like getting. I get my kicks like scaring people, frustrating people. I don't know what it is. Like for
Yeah.
example, when I first saw your channel, when I first discovered your channel, I watched the videos, right? And the videos are good. The videos were very nice, very funny, very well put together, analytic. Everything was solid. But the thing that really twisted shit up for me, where I was like, oh, I gotta get some of that, was the comments.
Yeah.
People in the comments just getting pissed off,
Oh yeah,
right?
yeah.
And insulting you and like because you're attacking their worldview, you know.
Yeah.
So I don't know what it is, but like I love just stirring the pot, I guess. So when I go out, I wear a full mask
Yeah.
and I wear gloves, and when people stare, I stare right back. I stare
Yeah.
right back at them. Like you should be wearing this too. I'm wearing this for you, man.
Yeah.
I'm wearing this out of consideration for you. My daughter has a cough here at home. I've been coughing for like 3 days. I have like a stuffy nose. I'm not sure what it is. I really don't know. I feel like I've gone through the regular route of viruses. Maybe this is a little bonus one, or maybe it's the coronavirus.
Well, it seems like if there's another virus that so closely resembles its symptoms, they should alert us of it. To
They
say
should,
this,
right? Yeah.
yeah, uh,
Yeah, they say. I mean, they say it's like the flu, but I already had my flu shot, and then they say it's like, oh, it could be like the cold at first, and then it like slowly builds up over time, and then like your body freaks out and decides whether it can fight it or not, and then you either die or you don't. And I'm like,
yeah.
this is not helping my anxiety here.
Yeah, so basically, like, I had a strange experience here also, where like after it emerged in China and it started spreading, I mean, basically, it's deductive reasoning, but I knew that this stuff is going to happen. Like the economy is going to collapse,
Yeah,
and they're going to start closing and everything, and I was kind of worried about the societal repercussions of that. And but nobody else around me was, so I was just walking around like at work, everywhere, trying to make a little coronavirus small talk at
yeah,
home. Nobody really gave a shit, and I just thought, am I fucking insane? Like, am I hyperventilating about it? And again, I was primarily concerned about like how it would affect like the society. I wasn't myself, like, I'm still not particularly preoccupied with it as far
right.
as catching it myself. But and I just had this kind of a couple of weeks there in transition, like about a month ago or something. And yeah, it's just like you're walking around like everything's normal. You start try to talk to people about it. Nobody seems concerned at all.
Hmm.
And at that point, like the death rate that was being commonly reported, the mortality rate was like 2%, which is
Yeah,
fucking gigantic.
yeah,
And
it's really
people
high.
literally somebody told me it's just 2%. And it's like, have you
Yeah,
cal
just 2%. Okay, like
yeah,
you want to take your odds on like a firing line, man? Like, what do you want? Like, how do you want me to break this down to you? That
yeah,
means you line 50 people up, and then one of them's gonna die.
exactly. Yeah, and I'm like, as far as like, and I was like, what the fuck? So then, like, when I start reading more into it, and I found out that there is, of course, a bias toward people who reported at the beginning who have the worst cases, who
Hmm.
go to the hospital at the beginning. So it's now, from what I understand, it's closer to zero point 0.4 to 0.6%. So I did a little calculations here. So American population around 330 million, 10% of that around 33 million, 0.4% of that is um, 132,000 people.
That's a lot of people.
Yeah. And this is very optimistic if only
Yeah,
10% of people get it. So,
yeah. I did. I ran the numbers too when it was before the CDC. I think Harvard released a projection, like an estimate of how many people would become infected and thus how many people would die. It was like a million people. Like a million
yeah,
people are gonna die, dude. Like
yeah,
And those are, and from what they said, that was a conservative number.
Yeah. Yeah, the number I heard, like, I don't know, whatever people think about Sam Harris, he did have a good conversation with an expert in infectious diseases, and what he said was around 600 to 700,000.
Yeah, that's a lot of people. I mean,
Yeah.
how many 9/11s is that, for example?
Yeah, yeah.
A lot. Like,
Yeah, 9/11 was
It's like-
yeah, 9/11 was 2,700 people.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it's I mean, there are a lot of people who are going to be obviously going through horrible experiences, and my sympathy is, with them. I'll do my best to help out the crisis by driving and vaping in rural Ohio, listening to Leonard Cohen or.
I'm just trying not to go out. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm really actually trying to observe it. And every time I've had to go out, which has only been like two times in the last week, where I've absolutely had to go out, I've seen assholes just doing the normal shit. And I'm like, you guys, like, I know that you don't understand yet, but the numbers are against you. Like, I don't think regular people on just day-to-day people are like, whatever, it's just like the flu, it's fine.
Yeah.
And then someone that they know gets sick, and then they're like, oh, you got sick? Like, yeah, bro, I had to go to the hospital, man. It was really bad. People were dying and shit. And then they're like, oh, this could actually affect me.
Yeah.
What does it take? What does it take for stubborn, stupid ass people to just?
Yeah, and I mean, like, what I encountered she was guffawing this. I mean, she was literally, I could hear her laughing in another room.
Denial? Is it denial? Is it fear?
I think it's like, it's living outside of history where you see some horrible shit on television, and for you to imagine it actually touching your life, it would be something equivalent to like a horror movie where something crawls out of your television. Like, it's just unimaginable.
Right,
and if you sort of are concerned with this, you're like a big douche. And I can honestly say that the primary reason I'm doing it is not to infect people going from hospital to hospital.
Right.
And like old men who work at my company, I also don't want to, like, I don't know, carry through some shit. I mean, it's not that I'm specifically that paranoid about myself or believe that wearing a mask and gloves will magically protect me. And then, like, I only do it for like 5 to 10 minutes at a time when I enter the hospital and leave. I don't fucking do it in the car or anything. So yeah, but this is like, all this line of reasoning is just kind of incomprehensible seemingly to some people who work at a fucking gigantic hospital. I mean, the hospital that, happened in, like, you can look up Good Samaritan Hospital, whatever, who gives a shit. But I mean, there are thousands of people in there. It's one of the largest hospitals in the area.
Yeah. I mean, stubbornness, denial, fear, that whole removed from, outside of history, like you're saying, like, I guess all of those things are just kind of confluence. Like, people just want to act normal, but they don't understand. Like, for example, if you got sick tomorrow, that means that you were contagious for 2 days, 2 or even 3 days before.
No, it could be a week or more.
Oh man, so like, well, then that's really bad. Because that means that everywhere you went, it's possible that you infected someone or touched something, or this is for me, someone who studied East-West, ideology and stuff like that. It's really frustrating to me when people are like, "Oh, dude, the surgical masks don't work, dude," and I'm like, "All right, I realize that you've seen, news reports and video of a lot of people over in Asia wearing masks, right? But it's also a cultural thing. Like, the mask, it's not just to protect them.
Yeah.
It's also so that they don't spread it around more. If they have it.
Yeah, and like, I have a big kind of issue with the masks, because obviously there's a shortage, and I want to say I didn't buy this mask, they gave it to me. And it makes sense to say to the public, hey, it gives you only a marginal benefit, and really right now, because apparently we're like a third world country that has like a shortage of fucking 10-cent masks.
Right.
That the market should prioritize right now healthcare professionals. All of that I understand, but these motherfuckers keep saying that it fucking, they're almost like there's no reason to wear a mask whatsoever. Like these, all these officials, and that is so full of shit. I mean, like, I put on this mask, everything,
Covers
it's
your mouth and nose.
yeah,
If you cough, if you exhale heavily, if droplets come out of your mouth, they're caught in the mask, and you're not transmitting the virus to other people.
I mean, there is, of course, of course, there are places like there is a metal thing here that fixates it to your nose. I mean, of course, shit can get in there. Like shit could stay on the mask, and then you put it down somewhere, and it goes inside. So all of this can happen. But to say fucking that putting something over your fucking face and nose has no fucking effect, statistically over time, it's not gonna like especially the surgical mask, it's not gonna like save you, of course, or anything.
Right.
But like the scarcity of a product shouldn't affect like the opinion of medical professionals as to its utility to the general public.
Yes.
And that's what's going on right now in the States. I don't know how it is in other countries, but this is the kind of shit we're like hearing again and again. Like, oh, if you're old or a medical professional, you might need the mask. And again, like, I'm not saying that healthy people, young, should like everybody should buy masks right now, because it does fuck with the supply, obviously.
Yes.
But to say that they're like, I don't know, that does piss me off, because it's like an obvious fucking stupid lie.
It is, and I'm definitely going beyond, like, I'm not just an armchair commentator on this. Like, I've worked with respirators and stuff. I used to work in fairly hazardous, like chimney cleaning, air ducts, like dry vents. You can't be breathing that stuff, especially if you're scrubbing creosote off a wall. Like, you can't breathe that stuff in. So I have familiarity with respirators, and I have P100 filters on my respirators. So I'm good. I'm good for a long time. But the reason why medical professionals are wearing masks is because they fucking work. Like, there isn't another reason.
Right.
The whole mentality that came out at the very, very beginning, when there was first few news stories about this, was, oh, everyone needs to buy an N95 mask. So all the N95 masks immediately got bought up by the general populace. Thankfully, they didn't buy up the R's. They didn't even buy up the N99s or the N100s, which would do the same thing. Because 95 is just 95%. Like, that's just percentile particulate that is caught by the mask. And the N, R, and P ratings are just different levels. And the lowest is N. So N, R, P, and then the number on behind it is either 95, 99, 99%, or 100. Okay? So the best you can get is P100. And the lowest level particulate mask that you can get is an N95. So they're like, oh, you have to get at least an N95 mask. But the information that was tailing these reports was, you shouldn't bother wearing a mask because you're going to fuck it up anyway. There's no point in you wearing a mask because you're not going to wear it right. And I'm like, possibly true, but wouldn't it be more helpful to just say, like, hey, make sure you learn how to do a pressure check on a mask if you're going to wear one. Like, learn how to use it. Like, don't just, throw the mask on your face and be like, ho, 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 cough in my face. I mean, I don't understand why the news reports are like, don't wear them because you're too stupid to operate it.
Yeah, that's such a dumb thing. And it's like they keep saying, like, wash your hands. And it's like, of course, a lot of my YouTube babies like look to me for medical guidance on this thing.
Sure.
And I want to say, of course, wash your hands. But they're like, wash your hands, sing happy birthday, but don't fucking wear the mask, right? Because it's useless, because it's just going to get into your mouth anyway when your whole mouth is... I mean, again, I know that it can get in there, but it's just such a dumb message. Like, it doesn't transfer primarily through like touching a handle and then rubbing your. It can, and again, you should wash your hands. But again, like the fucking scarcity of masks shouldn't determine like your medical advice. Like if people like fucking wash their hands continuously, but they're too stupid to wear a mask. Like the thing about it, like it's difficult to wear that mask throughout the whole day, and like it's difficult to work to wear it at work all the time. But at least on like public transit, when you're like in crowds of people, like there is no difference between you. Well, I want to say this: there is a big difference between you and the medical professional in the sense that they're specifically working in a hospital with huge concentration, but there is no difference in the sense that you're exposed to huge numbers of people who could be asymptomatic, and that's the way primarily that this thing like transfers. So again, like saying this shit like they do in America again and again and again, like how masks are useless and you're too stupid to wear them. I mean, that's dangerous advice to people.
It's very dangerous. Yes, we have a very empowered disinformation media platform. I mean, it's the internet. Like anyone can publish a news story. Anyone can say anything. And when the pros are out there, not necessarily disseminating disinformation or misinformation, but saying, "Hey, don't do this because you're too dumb to operate it," probably sending the wrong message.
Yeah.
You know, not only are people at that point like still going to buy masks, like then they're not going to feel empowered to use them. You know,
yeah.
use them appropriately. What they should have been doing from the start is saying, hey, don't buy up all the masks.
Yeah.
Like, chill out. If you're going to go out in public and if you feel the need to protect yourself, please just, you know, cover your face. You can wear a cloth over your face. You can wear silk, like a high weave silk over your face is going to do the same thing as a dust mask, you know?
Yeah.
So I don't know, man. Like, it's just like one idiot after another. And what are you supposed to do? Like, if you're a regular person, you're paying attention to this shit. Maybe you went to try to go buy a N95 mask like everyone else, or you looked on Amazon and you were like, oh man, all the N95 masks are $300. Like, what? You know, I can't afford that. So you just shrugged it off. And you heard, oh, it's useless to wear a mask anyway, so I'm not even going to bother with one. Yeah, don't listen to that.
Yeah.
Don't listen to that. The reason why you see a billion Asian people wearing masks is because that they do actually work.
Yeah, like you get double protection from the person and for yourself. Hey, Brian, like, can you move the microphone a little closer?
Yeah.
Like one in the chat saying like he can't hear you, but I mean I can hear you, but I don't know. I can't, unfortunately, like. With this program, like I continuously tried to adjust. I tried to look for ways to adjust the volume of the guest's microphone, but I don't know how to do it.
Tell me if this is better or worse. How's that? Do I sound better?
That's better. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it creates like white noise for some reason.
Yeah, you know, I turned off the audio processing because we're having that one problem.
Yeah.
I guess I could try to turn it back on.
Yeah.
Do you want me to see if I can turn it back on?
People are saying it's better now. I guess they don't mind the white noise. Right. Yeah, there's some white noise, but whatever.
No, I have a lot of fans and stuff going. So.
Yeah. Yeah. So like the other thing, I mean, I don't know. I mean, the one thing to say is like something we've already touched on, and you brought up Fukuyama. And it's just sort of like we do live outside of history. I mean, like 9/11 happened and these wars happen, but they're obviously very abstract and in other corners of the world. But this, you know, kind of affects everyone. And now we're all affected by this mass event for the first time since 9/11, which obviously didn't last as far as its kind of impact on day-to-day society. People just moved on.
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's like an obvious thing to say.
Well, I think 9/11 is kind of different in a couple of ways, just because, I mean, it was a shorter-term thing, but it changed our sort of levels of xenophobia, as well as destroying like a a symbolic representation of our financial industry. Destroyed a landmark. So I mean, that's kind of a permanent marker that forever's changed. So that's different. It's different in that way. But I feel like this virus is going to hit people on a very personal level when, like, they have grandparents or elder parents if they're adult children. I mean, some of these people are going to die, and the longer the quarantine is postponed by these people, the longer we're going to have to do it. And so, thus, the more the markets are going to be disrupted, the more your retirement is going to evaporate. The more, I've already lost. I can't even imagine how much money I've already lost. So it's like, to me, it's all imaginary anyway. So it doesn't really matter. To me, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I mean, and the other thing, it's like to deal with the freak out in society and to avoid cabin fever, there needs to be some thought about what is going to be the coronavirus normal. I mean, it's going to still be horrible, but what is past like the quarantine curve where there is some idea of normalcy? And again, and this is why it's so dumb to like shit on masks, because coronavirus normal in South Korea and Hong Kong, it involves fucking masks all day, every day in public. And all these idiots, like, again, shitting. And again, I'm not saying people should hoard masks or like.
Don't hoard masks.
Yeah. But eventually this should be normal, like gloves and masks. And the sooner we get to it, the sooner we can return to fucking something resembling normalcy.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, if you need to go out in public right now, please feel free to wear gloves if you have access to gloves. If you don't have access to gloves, obviously make sure you're washing your hands. Obviously stay away from anyone who's coughing. And anyone who is coughing, should probably be aware of what's going on. I mean, I went to the grocery store the other day. It was just a couple days ago. It's not like this has not been news. And she was just open coughing, and there was this lady open coughing into the air. A Karen, a can I speak to the manager lady? Very very stereotypical and inconsiderate as you could imagine. But just open air, like, what? Dude, cover your stupid fucking gullet.
Yeah.
What is going on? Be considerate.
Yeah.
Be considerate of other people. I mean, what is it going to take? Is it going to take this killing, 3% of the population in order for people to become more considerate?
Yeah.
I mean, that would be what? How many millions of people would that be in this country? It would be 10 million people.
Yeah, exactly.
No, it'd be 30 million people. No, that would be 10%. Fuck, I'm terrible at math. Look at my math. My math brain is running. It's running circles.
But no, you're right. 9-10 million people, yeah.
It would be a large percentage of the population, relatively. So, I don't know how to make people more considerate, and I don't know how to make them less stubborn. But maybe this is that kind of thing.
Yeah, recently some like Republican congressmen posted tweets with pictures of them going to crowded places and saying we need to support local businesses and stuff like that. So,
yeah, no, like don't do that. If you need to order, I guess if you need to go to drive-thrus, be smart about it. Don't infect the workers that are there. If you're sick, if you're feeling sick, do the hand sanitizer thing. If you have hand sanitizer, you can use rubbing alcohol. Don't do that to excess. It will dry out your hands and they will crack and bleed. Or if you're gonna do like takeout, same thing. Just be smart about it.
Yeah, like if you go to some public place, wear gloves, because at least they'll remind you to not touch your face, and like just as a cue to wash your hands, wash the gloves, all this shit. But anyway, like the one thing about this virus is that it kind of very nicely mirrors the philosophy of Stefan Molyneux, because this like virus is basically the ideal organism, like basically like brainless, like just the minimum thing, and all it does is reproduce. Like there is no other experience to it but reproduction. So
yeah, I don't know if viruses are actually categorized as life, as organisms as such, Um, I know
I
that
think
that's a very technical.
Well, don't they have? I think they have like a strand of RNA or something. Like just
Yeah, they do. They do have. I mean, they, by all intents and purposes, for me, I mean, I would consider a virus a living thing, but most people in the scientific realms, biology, etc., don't consider them living things. So it's kind of it's kind of weird. Like a
yeah,
virus doesn't necessarily die; it becomes inert. You know, like for example, on a surface or whatever. So, I mean, as in consideration of Stefan Molyneux's philosophy, if reproduction is the sole reason for any being to
yeah,
exist,
yeah.
then
Then virus. Yeah, it's not
there you
just
have
life.
it. Yeah, it's number
Yeah,
one.
it's not just life. It's the essence of life. Like it's the
Ah,
essence.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's a weird
And
way to
it
look at the world, isn't it?
doesn't need a woman also.
Well, you were saying, as you were saying in the video, which I thought was it's a good observation, but it's also very strange. He only has one child?
Yeah,
Like if that's the entire point of existence, and he does totally arrange things that way.
yeah,
I would, I am assuming here that he's actually just an incel type philosopher. Like he's just playing to his audience.
I mean, yeah, all of this like talk about genetics and all this shit. All of this is just a cover for not getting laid, for being
I
frustrated.
mean, yeah, that's
Yeah, and it's just this is like another abuse of evolutionary theory to basically justify not getting laid.
Well, it's like saying, I mean,
to justify the rage against women because you're not getting laid.
right? Like, yeah, there's a whole other misogynist aspect to it as well. So
Yeah,
it is the like how do you hate something that you want to possess? I don't know. It's fucking weird. But I do see how there are so many problems with his basic like orientation to women, sex, like that. Understand, like if he's not maximizing his genetic output somehow, like that is diminishing his experience, is fucking absurd. Like that's just nonsensical. Like if you had any number of offspring, it doesn't mean that you are persisting. It doesn't mean that you are alive or living, or that your consciousness is somehow expanding. Like these are the words of a madman. Like that doesn't make any sense.
yeah. No, I do think that all of this is just a pretext for being angry for women because you're not getting laid. I mean, but they had to like code it in this evolutionary bullshit.
And I get, and that's the strange thing about it, is like I get what he's saying, but if you aren't selected, as it were selected, you have survival of the fittest, etc. You have to be selected in a evolutionary thought, projection. Your traits have to be selected for survival. If your traits, I think he says something like 40% of men don't reproduce or something like that. If your traits are not selected to progress, where's the harm? Like if you believe in evolution.
Yeah, there's no harm.
Yeah, there's no harm. That's actually beneficial.
The whole thing with evolution is bullshit. It's the genes that matter. It's not individuals. Genes get diluted, obviously, from generation to generation with infusion. It's like there are lizards who can replicate themselves without a mate. But that's not the way it works with mammals.
But his entire arc of thinking, the projection, the being somehow reduced to mere genetic persistence, is embarrassing.
Yeah,
he's embarrassing as a person, and you can see when I was watching the video. I swear I had moments where I was like, oh man, he totally rehearsed this part. And boy, did he deliver! Like he pulls off those parts that he rehearsed so intently.
Yeah,
and I felt embarrassing.
Yeah.
I felt the embarrassment for him deep in my own being.
Well, it's so profoundly stupid because the first thing he says is that I have a superpower, and that's kind of saying anything as long as I don't care. And then literally he goes on for most of that presentation saying why it makes, well, how dangerous it is to speak out in front of women because somehow through some gynecological whatever fucking network, everybody's gonna find out. So even that is just a dumb fucking contradiction. But anyway, he's just a useless asshole. He's only good for like platform as a platform for ridicule.
Kind of like Peterson, right?
Well, I mean, Peterson at least has redeeming qualities in the sense that he provides kind of archetypal bullshit that gives people like sometimes, not all of his shit, but a lot of it just gives people like straight like life advice through making life into this dramatic archetypal battle, and then it's like clean your room or organize your future. So he has these redeeming qualities. I'm not saying that they redeem him in his totality, but there is just like general self-help bullshit from dad that resonates with people. Like according to many studies, well, this is just a scientific fact that therapy works regardless of what philosophy or approach the therapist has. It works if there is a connection, emotional connection with the client. So there are a lot of dudes who are stuck in life and they see Peterson as a YouTube dad. And if what they take away from him are just these bullshit banality, like life advice, that's different from Stefan Molyneux, who encourages you to like separate from your family, to completely hate women. Not to say that Peterson doesn't say misogynistic shit here and there, but not nearly to the same degree.
So it's kind of, I mean, it's kind of like your YouTube babies. You know, they come to you for advice. They want Papa Ivan, Papa Ivan.
Yeah.
Tell me, what should I do? What do I do? And so they come to you, and you tell them, don't worry, my children. You know, just don't listen. Look over there. Look at Billy over there. He's not getting laid. He's not getting laid either, but he's listening to Peterson.
Right.
Okay, his worldview is completely fucked. It's like a battle of the dads. It's amazing.
Yeah, and it's like the whole idea behind calling me like the ultimate YouTube dad is to ridicule this kind of a strange thing that's promoted on YouTube, this intimacy that I actually disagree with, because ultimately like people watch my shit as long as they find it interesting, and then you know, like I do what's interesting to me, and if there is like a partition, a division around it, you know, that relationship ends, and there is no need to like make it like other YouTubers do, like so hyper emotional and so on. But that's mostly like a business strategy. So yeah,
describe to me more in detail, because I'm a little bit unfamiliar. But like the intimacy that you're talking about, like, do you mean like in a connection between the viewer and yourself? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, like they create like different names for their subscribers. And like right. It's a kind of some sort of a family, or they like continuously do the e-begging pity thing with their mental health, which I kind of resent. And like that's why I didn't put like a Patreon link on my bipolar video, because you know it's like it's manipulative.
Yeah.
Like sometimes like Boogie, like that like overweight guy who struggles with obesity, like he consistently like kind of
I think I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, like he consistently milks it for like, oh, I'm gonna lose weight, I can't lose weight, I'm depressed. And I'm not saying that he doesn't have emotional issues, but it's just fucking too much. People just give him money continuously for that kind of pity shit.
It's and like a sympathy thing that he's using to I mean, exploit is kind of a heavy term, but do you think he's exploiting them?
Basically, yeah.
Yeah.
Because like on other platforms, he doesn't sound like that.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. That is interesting. It's sort of like a predator and prey situation in that case.
Well, like YouTube, there is a special intimacy to it for some reason. Maybe because people watch it on mobile, or like there is some special intimacy, like radio or podcasts. And I feel like it's true, it's there, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't acknowledge some connection with fans and like some sense of like. But ultimately, like if people don't find my YouTube videos interesting, they don't watch them. So like I started talking about Tibetan Buddhism and my Patreon dropped, and that's completely predictable, and that's how it should be,
Sure.
But it's like if I said, oh, like I don't know, you're not being loyal to me or some shit like that, or it's ultimately like entertainment that people watch or not at the end of the day, and there's no
it's a channel. It's just another thing of a billion things that are out there for people to watch. It's nothing personal to you. Yeah.
I mean, there is a certain connection you have with subscribers. Yeah. And like I don't even like to use the word fans or anything like that for that reason, because then it just gets weird. And it's like if I want to do other videos, like I also I guess don't like being told what I should make, because you don't have to fucking watch it, and I'm not guilting anybody for not watching it or something.
Well, there's an inherently like social aspect to this platform, which is interacting through comments. Hey, you can respond to, well, you used to be able to like directly reply to other people's videos. I don't think you can anymore. But you can do those types of things. Oh, this person said this. Here, I'm going to counter that and post. Here's a link to their original video or whatever. Like that creates for content creators. That creates a social network. Comments are kind of second or third tier even at that point. But I understand viewers wanting to be engaged with the person who's making content.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I'm just saying that it should be made like, it's kind of like, when you work at a company and they say we're a family, and it's like, this is also kind of bullshit. But I mean, there is a community when you work with people, and there's a community around the channel. So, and that's really cool, but there's no reason to like amp it up like whatever, H3. I mean, all of them do it basically. Like all of them. Like,
it doesn't need to be a cult, is what you're saying.
Like Joe Rogan is good for not doing it. Like he doesn't have any kind of a special name for his fans or anything.
Right. That's true. Yeah.
So like calling myself a YouTube dad is kind of like a play on that.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm not saying that there shouldn't be a community or like some sense of a community around the channel. That's good, but let's not go to extremes. So now here there is an awkward transition, because they just talked about people like talking about their mental health issues for sympathy. So in this case, like what I want to talk about is my own kind of issues with bipolar that I just had, because the reason I snapped out and was able, the reason I was able to do the Molyneux video is because I snapped out of Tibetan Buddhism entirely almost. And I just want to talk about this bizarre experience, but not from the point of view of like milking for pity, because I'm sure people watching this have their own problems and some are bigger than mine and stuff like that. And I can't even say that I'm like suffering to the core of my being because of it, but like, I guess like what I want to discuss is the bizarre idea, like my bizarre experience at the beginning of last year around this time, when all of a sudden I started continuously thinking about Buddhism without any conscious decision whatsoever. Like there was no like, oh, I think I might get into Buddhism, no conscious decision like that whatsoever. I just started thinking about it until it like took over all of my thoughts. And then recently, like I was again completely preoccupied with it. And then like about like a month ago, I would say like after the last stream, like in those 1 to 2 weeks, it just ended. Like it just like lights are off. And I went from thinking about Buddhism 24/7, the first thing when I wake up, and the last thing that the last thing before bed, and then it's suddenly gone. And like for the first time in months, I started to experience boredom, because like I had a sense of like there's just an emptiness there, and not the Buddhist kind. And there's like, what am I gonna do now? And then I was like, I guess I'm just gonna continue doing my videos that I was unable to do just a few weeks prior, because I was thinking about Buddhism all the time. And now, like, on the other hand, I flipped, and I don't think about Buddhism at all now. Like, it's just completely shut off. And when that happens, that's extremely bizarre. And it's hard to like explain to people what that is. It's like, at the beginning of the year, you got obsessed with Catholicism. You thought you had a special role to play in changing Catholicism for the better in the 21st century. And then you were obsessed with this for months. And then, like, one day, like, literally almost in a couple of days, it just shuts off and you no longer relate to it. Like, my Buddhist videos right now, I tried to watch a little bit of it, and it felt like entering another world, basically. Like, I no longer related to it that much. I still love Tibetan Buddhism, and like I said before, I believe there are tons of useful things in there for, like, as far as secular psychology and philosophy. But I just, like, I have 3 books right now that I was reading about Buddhism, and now I have, like, zero interest in them, basically. And this had nothing to do with any conscious thought whatsoever. There wasn't like, oh, this Buddhism, isn't working for me. I guess I would just go back to, like, a different way of thinking. That didn't happen. It just completely shut off. Like, some dopamine pump, like, turned off, and now I'm, like, back. And that all of these, like, 11 or 10 months or however long it lasted are now, like, in retrospect, to me, completely surreal. Like, so I guess I'll just talk about it, like, real quick, like, my negative and positive associations with it, with this time frame. So first, the negative, right? So I've realized, like, there's an idea of insight in mental illness. And insight is when a person, like a schizophrenic, experiences voices. They hear the voices, but they know that this is a sign of mental illness and that those voices aren't really there. And that's called insight. So I thought I had insight because I always, like, coached this and told myself and others that I'm having a manic episode and so on. And I, like, joked around about communicating with bodhisattvas and so on. But the bottom line is, like, when the cameras are off, like, streams and conversations with people are a tiny portion of my life. Most of the time I'm completely alone. And I basically realized that over time, I didn't completely believe it, but I mostly believed it. And mostly I believed that I'm a reincarnation of the Mongolian monk Agvan Dorjiev, that I was communicating through my thoughts with bodhisattvas continuously. And I underestimated to the way that this affected me, because I could always have the party line that I'm experiencing a manic episode. But saying that and joking around about it doesn't change the fact that it completely dominates your thoughts for the entirety of these, like, 10 months. And now that it completely shut off, I once again realized that I'm like a man-child who is incapable of functioning as an adult. Because if I had any other job aside from, like, vaping and driving around in Ohio, I wouldn't be able to sustain it realistically, because I can't stop the stream of thoughts, or, like, the stream of a great sense of meaning. And so basically I've wasted a year of my life, and basically it's still kind of kicking my ass. And that whole period of being obsessed with Buddhism feels like some sort of a joke, and I feel like a goofy loser who, like, progressing toward my mid-30s without a career, without a young honey, without any kind of attributes of normal adult life. So So that's kind of that's on the negative side. And then on the positive side, I had a great sense of meaning. This was my most meaningful year since 2014, which is the last time I got obsessed with Buddhism. And in 2014, the exact same thing happened. At the beginning of the year, I started only thinking about Buddhism. Then I again believed that I'm Agvan Dorjiev. And then it kind of escalated, and then I fell into a depression for a year. So hopefully that's not going to happen this time. But anyway, I had a very meaningful and eventful year in my head. I had beautiful and sublime, like, spiritual experiences, basically like a high, continuously. I mean, I was communicating with bodhisattvas, which is, again, a kind of psychosis, but it's a very pleasant one because they're always there. And it's interesting to communicate with a third-party presence through thoughts. It's kind of a beautiful and interesting experience. I had, like, great compassion. Well, I had compassion for other people more so than I usually do. It blocked my seasonal depression. I didn't have the usual seasonal depression I have in the winter time. It helped me deal with the death of my grandmother, who, again, I was very close with. And even as she was dying, I was, like, chanting the Green Tara mantra and playing this music. And it helped me, all of it helped me deal with my grandmother's death. Because, again, like, once she died, I had an internal assumption that she has reincarnated. So for me, like, I even didn't experience that death completely, because in that state of mind, it was just a continuum of her existence. It helped me with the not fully feeling the pain of falling in love. So strangely enough, in 2014, the last time it happened, I was manic. I also, like, was preoccupied with the love, and this girl came here to visit me. In this case, I fell in love with a young lady, and it didn't preoccupy me and didn't assume, like, the same huge portion of my thoughts as it did before. Unfortunately, this is kind of starting to happen now when I think about it more and more, but hopefully I'll get over it. So now,
you think about the girl, or what do you think about more and more?
The girl, yeah.
Oh.
Because, like, this was the first time I've, like, meaningfully interacted with a woman since, again, 2014. And like, when I fall in love, I become kind of unbalanced, and it becomes like this giant possibility of salvation and this, like, metaphysical big deal. But since my mind in this case was occupied with Buddhism, it kind of blunted that, although it's kind of starting to appear a little bit. So yeah, I mean, now that it ended, I'm no longer, like, have the fear of reincarnation, because I was afraid of I just want to die at the end of my life, and, like, reincarnating endlessly felt, I no longer feel the pressure, of course, to become enlightened, which was a big kind of pressure. And I don't have the pressure now to start this Buddhist society that I was obsessed with, because that was a heavy burden, a heavy crown to carry, thinking about, like, I would fantasize it on the one hand, and it was a pleasant fantasy. On the other hand, I didn't want to take responsibility for the lives of these, like, hundreds and maybe thousands of people who would join this hypothetical Buddhist society that I have in my mind. And so now, basically, at the end of this, I have to contemplate, and I basically will take an antipsychotic. I already take 2 medications, and now I will have all 3 classes: a mood stabilizer, lithium, an anti-epileptic, lamotrigine, and now, like, a atypical antipsychotic, which I will now start taking probably shortly if their office is open. And I didn't want to take antipsychotics because they basically fuck with your dopamine, and stereotypically they, like, slow you down, and sometimes this results in being almost, like, partly sedated. Like, this is what they give to schizophrenics and kids with autism who are like running around in circles to like calm them down. And the idea of taking like a powerful drug like that is something I wanted to avoid. But now that I have basically like again, I had good times during this year. Like it wasn't completely wasted. I learned a lot about Buddhism and I appreciate it. But as far as like being completely deluded while learning, or like partially deluded and experiencing some light psychosis, I mean, like I can't continue living my life like this because this is gonna kick my ass eventually. Like how much more of my life can I waste on this? I'm not talking about Tibetan Buddhism, which again I appreciate. I'm talking about like this specific mode of thinking. So I try to retain like the positive aspects of Buddhism by remembering compassion. Like I got a little mala, a little beads that I will now wear to remember like the value of compassion. And also I got another little custom bracelet online that hasn't arrived yet that I will wear that says like watch the space between your thoughts, because this was very useful advice. And actually like I became, even though I was deluded in other aspects of my life, my thinking became ironically more organized because I was using mindfulness and using Buddhist techniques that work. So yeah, so that's kind of I guess what I wanted to say.
Did you want to take any questions to that?
Good, yeah, sure.
When you were in the mode of, you know, having the conversations and doing the videos, for example, did you find that being in that mode was actually helpful to the end of making the videos?
Well, I definitely wouldn't make 11 hours on Buddhism like without it.
You would never do that just out of sheer interest.
I mean, maybe I would do something about like Buddhist philosophy and psychology, maybe something like an hour or two, but I wouldn't do 11 hours. I like for this whole time I was watching lamas talk, and I read like 10, I think 10 books or more. And I actually learned a lot, but that's what I would do all day, like
Gotcha.
without exaggeration. Yeah. Like I would watch these videos. So, I mean, the thing about it is this is a rare like meaning high. Your sense of meaning gets upped, and then like your mind begins to look for the plane to like match this level of sense of meaning. And then, of course, like in my case, I go to religion, of course, because it's like the vast fields where and there are a lot of mentally ill people who this is like a typical symptom in bipolar and schizophrenia, becoming hyper-religious. This is literally a clinical symptom. So like in my case, like I'm one of the subset of bipolar people who get preoccupied with religion. And like, again, it's a subtle and it's a very pleasant high. It is a high.
Yeah.
But if I had it once in my life, I would have no regrets. But I have it regularly; it interrupts my life.
Yeah, you're saying like the entire year was a waste.
I mean, not entirely, but in many ways, yeah, because I was deluded. Like there was nothing else that I thought about during that time.
I mean, I've been deluded for years too. I don't know if that's the same thing though.
Yeah.
I mean, like I've wasted plenty of time. What I'm saying, I'm not trying to diminish your experience at all. I'm trying to validate your experience, in saying like, yeah, like shit, like I've wasted so much time doing so many stupid things, you know, like. So I don't know if that's the right way to gauge it or to frame it in terms of having mental illness. You know, like in this case, like you're coming to this realization now of saying like, hey, like I wasted a bunch of time. I'm a man child or whatever. Like I haven't been able to get anything really going in my adult life. Those things that sounds more profound to me than you know the normal regrets of time. You know, not maybe not spent the way you want to.
Yeah,
But
I
who's
mean,
to say? Who's to say now? Because clearly your perspective changed, or something changed,
I
and
mean,
now it.
right. Yeah, I mean, like I said before, like if this happened once, like I've wasted my college years by walking around in circles and talking to myself, listening to music. Then, like, I moved to Seattle because I believed I was destined to go there. Um, then I had a manic breakdown there where I like spent $15,000 in 2 weeks, like destroyed my credit, had to move
Yeah.
in with my mother. Then like I went to Columbus again, believing like periodically that I had great destiny, although then like I started to doubt it already. But then I had the last episode at the end of my 20s where um, I had my second clinical depression that lasted for a year when I was, and now like I'm just living with my mother for the past like 6 years, and now it like happened again, even though I'm taking like gigantic quantities of lithium that are like twice as much as many people take, and yet it still didn't shut it down. So now I like gonna take 3 drugs to try to shut it down, but whatever.
Do you feel like those drugs are ultimately going to help you do what you're saying now, like what you want to do with either personal functionality or personal like life progression type things? Like, do you feel that those drugs are going to help?
It's like maybe they will. I can't modulate my mood, so like when
Uh-huh.
my mood is high, I get consumed in um, big ideas, and I get a very sweet high, and I usually get it like a couple of times a week in at night. But then like I end up chasing that high, or end up like I either have like anxious withdrawal from that high, or I experience the high. Throughout this whole time, I have racing thoughts and different ideas, and this is good in many ways. It's good, but like I don't live. I'm not connected with reality, basically. Like I appear that I'm connected with reality, and I am when I interact with other people. In a sense, like I can interact on a normal plane, but then I just uh, escape into my own thoughts and world, and like I only started thinking about saving money or any kind of money management like a year ago. So like in my 30s, basically. It literally, before that, it never occurred to me, aside from like not spending more money than I have. But any kind of long-term management or trying to save a little money here and there literally never occurred to me because I live in this world. But anyway, so that's kind of my pity story. But like I said, I'm not profoundly suffering, but like the experience of being preoccupied with a religion intensely for a year, and then it just snapping off like that. That's not an experience that is easy to explain. It's a bizarre experience,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
but aside from that, yeah, I basically kind of said it all.
I mean, it's very interesting to me to hear because I can find commonality in the things that you've said, and I am, if I have anything, I'm undiagnosed, right? I have some anxiety sometimes, and I take Xanax sometimes for that. But being riding that wave of that high, and like being obsessed with religion, for example, like when I fell in love with my wife, right? Like I'm just on this super high place, started to try to get into her religion. Like it transported me to a whole other mindset. Now I wouldn't necessarily say like I was acting as a different person or personality or anything like that. Like I very much felt like myself, just in a very different mode. Would you say that in this sense, like you really feel that your motivations, your state, that whole mode that you're in is very different? Like, would you say that's a very big difference?
Well, I mean, like again, like I like during this time again, it was repressed by lithium.
Mhm.
Um, so I didn't fully believe that I'm a reincarnated llama, but by and large, I like now that it has shut off, I realize that even though I told other people that I'm manic and told myself that as a party line, this was like a surface rationality, and beyond that,
The insight. The
I
insight. right?
basically was waiting, like at the beginning of this year, for a sign from a bodhisattva that I should start this society. Like I had a sense that somebody is going to contact me because of my Buddhist video, and then we might start this society together. And I was, and I thought about like erasing this channel, and I was waiting for a sign, and each day and every day, well, studying more about Buddhism, and then it just like shut off in a week, and now it's largely irrelevant.
Yeah, I mean, it's very interesting. I mean, you seem, because you did the Molyneux video, like, do you feel like you've now returned to your previous state, or like your mode, as I was kind of describing? Like, do you feel like you're back there now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, like I don't think about Buddhism now hardly at all. Like I just, and when I think about like yeah, like it just shut off. So that's the weird.
Do you think that there is a physical, chemical difference in your brain that is causing that? That is really like you coming through, or do you feel like that is a product of medication over time, or like what do you think, or what do you feel is the reason for this change?
I have no idea. I mean,
you have no idea.
I believe like in schizophrenia, increased dopamine. I mean, that's a very simplistic way of looking at it, but increased dopamine causes one part of the brain to be hyperactive, and that's when they start hearing things and seeing things. And the other aspect of it causes them to withdraw from society because another part of the brain is understimulated with dopamine. And what these drugs, antipsychotics, are meant to augment is the balance between dopamine and serotonin, and the communication between different pathways. So back in the day, the antipsychotics were very crude, and they'd like shut down your dopamine. A person with schizophrenia would not experience voices, but they would be very withdrawn and, like, in a literal sense, retarded, a little bit retarded. Like they would move slower. It causes tremors in your hands. And now the new generation of antipsychotics are supposed to do this on a more sophisticated level, and Abilify has fewer symptoms, but it fucks with your metabolism. People gain weight, have a higher chance of developing diabetes.
Gotcha.
But I guess this is the shit. Well, I mean, I'll have to try it now.
But like that's the physical, like that's the physical mechanism that it will do when you start taking it.
They don't fully know like how everything works, but they just have psychoactive agents and they throw them at people and see if it sticks, basically.
Yeah. Gotcha. Interesting.
Yeah, like some people have a ton of symptoms with lithium. I have no symptoms. Sometimes I have a tremor in my hand, but nothing intense. But other people have a horrible time on it, and antipsychotics have horrible symptoms for some people. So we'll see. It's still just a big experiment, but we'll see. Right. So that's kind of my kind of a story of mental illness. And now we can move on to, I guess, maybe a less pleasant topic for some people, which is Joe Biden. So basically, the way I would explain the rise of Joe Biden, it's kind of like, let's say, Brian, you would throw away a towel and it would lie around in your bin, and then you're like, hey, I could use this thing as a cum rag.
It's so same feeling, right?
Kind of like Joe Biden emerged from like the mediocrity trash heap, like some sort of shitty superhero. Now he's back.
God. I know.
Yeah. So, what are your reflections on this?
So for months, DNC was nothing but just Joe Biden. Joe Biden. Joe Biden's the nominee. Oh, Joe Biden's the one. I know a lobbyist who works out of Tennessee and does a lot of state elections and has a lot of politicians in his pocket and does that type of thing. Well, this guy months ago was like, oh, it's Joe Biden. Joe Biden is the one. Joe Biden is the one. Okay. And I'm like, well, what do you think? Because there's Warren, like Warren had her thing going for a while, and then Pete sort of came out of nowhere with the Iowa stuff, and then Bernie's been around since last go round, and so I'm like, Biden, like fuck me, Biden, right? Like I was paying attention to electoral college politics, fucking 12 years ago, when Joe Biden was running against Barack Obama for the nomination first go around with Obama. When he was running against Hillary and Barack, and that was what 2008, right? 2007. And I remember Biden as the gaffe machine. Like I kind of liked him back then. I kind of liked his kind of freewheeling, like, oh, I tell it how it is kind of attitude and stuff like that. But even then, he was kind of old. Especially,
he's as old as Bernie. So I mean, if you support Bernie, I mean, Biden's just as old.
Yeah, but I mean, like he was kind of old back then. You know what I mean? Like, so it is weird to keep seeing this dude come back around. I know that previously he tried to run before that even, and didn't do very well because he says weird shit sometimes. And so after you got Barack, after you had Sanders and Hillary Clinton running, I'm like, damn, like Joe is your guy. Like after all of these people, and after the field presented itself. I mean, I know people weren't into Kamala Harris. I'm like, yeah, she's a cop, but at the very least, she's for universal health care. Like, that's something. Like, at least that's a thing. But Joe Biden is like, no. We're going to go back. We're going to be the most conservative-styled Democrat in the field from years ago. Nothing up to date, guys. Like, we're not, like, the most conservative now. We're the most conservative from way back then. So, I mean, terrible record. Like, his voting record is terrible. It's undeniable. And so I asked my lobbyist friend, I'm like, how do you think Joe Biden is ever going to overcome his record, number one, his age, number two, which shows a little bit more with Biden than it does Bernie, you got to admit.
Well, no, I don't believe that. I mean,
you don't think so?
Bernie just had some sort of an operation on his heart recently. I mean,
I mean, health issues like that we don't see on the debate stage aside.
Yeah.
Like, yes, we heard about that, but Joe Biden standing up there, and sometimes he's slurring words. It sounds like he might have dementia at some points. It does seem as though he may have it.
I'm not sure, but.
So, I mean, there are numerous things. And I'm like, man, Joe Biden is the guy. Okay. And then the numbers started to go in his favor. Bernie had a big surge. And I really like Bernie. I liked Warren to a point. And then it just became clear that she wasn't actually a believer in some of the things that she said, which is fine. It's totally fine. It's a typical politician type thing. She'd been in it for long enough for it to affect her. And now, hey, Biden's the guy, right? Biden's the guy. We haven't heard from him for a few days.
Yeah. I mean, basically who Biden is, he's just like a dude who like hung around the Senate forever. And he was just always there and just always kind of voted when Democrats were tough on crime. He was tough on crime.
Friends with Strom Thurmond, a noted racist.
Yeah, I mean, he basically, like, they say the Senate is, like, the most elite club in the world. Sure. And basically, that's Biden was just a club guy who, like, hang out there with Ted Kennedy and with all of them. And eventually, like, Obama chose him because under the logic that Joe Biden, like, is a chummy guy who, like, Obama is kind of cooler and kind of cold. Like, not such a, like, small talk, like, chummy dude. And so like this Joe
Not so
Biden,
touchy feely, you know.
yeah, like Joe Biden would like, as an old Pole, he would like help push the legislation through, and he had Republican friends. And from what I understand, this was largely useless. Like this didn't pan out. He was just kind of a dude who was there, and he actually like said that when Obama introduced healthcare, um, yeah, so when he introduced healthcare, Biden actually thought it was a big political risk and told him not to do it. And then he said, well, that's later he reflecting on that, he said, well, that's why Obama's the president. And it's like, yeah, dude, exactly. Like you just wanted, again, like some more establishment, like conventional shit. And so, yeah, he's not a bad person. I have no evidence. I mean, he is kind of creepy around women, but I don't think it's sexual.
He's definitely creepy, dude.
I think he just basically like likes to kind of like touch women, but like he doesn't respect their personal space. But I don't think he's sexual about it. He thinks that this is like a friendly thing to do, but it is inappropriate. But I don't think he's a horrible person, and he had a lot of tragedy in his life. His son died, and his first wife died in a car crash, I think, with their daughter. So he went through a lot of difficulties in his life. But overall, he's just kind of a goofball who hung around the Senate and really didn't do anything aside from like vote in the exact same way everybody else did. So yeah, I mean, it's really like I felt all the moderates in the race were kind of completely uninspiring. I guess like it's hard to find an inspiring moderate aside from like Obama. I wish the Ohio senator like Sherrod Brown ran, because he wanted to expand Medicare to 50, so like take in more of older sicker people to make the rest of the market cheaper. And to me, as a kind of somebody who's like closer, I don't know, who's basically like, I'm basically an Obama bro. Like, did Obama disappoint me? Not really. I have to say. I know this might be controversial, but whatever. So yeah, like Sherrod Brown, I wish would run, but yeah, I mean, Biden is a goofball, and it's kind of silly. I admire Bernie for speaking to economic desperation people have. Nobody speaks with economic desperation people have. Like, you miss one paycheck, you're fucked.
Right.
Credit card bills, college loans. A lot of people are running in the hamster wheel, and like Bernie is the only one who talked about it with immediacy.
Yeah, and the movement is huge for working Americans. I mean, lower class, working people, working poor, working middle class people, all are totally into what Bernie is saying, and for some reason, we may never know. He didn't do that well in some of the bigger states. He did very well in California, which is full of progressives. The vote was split over here in Massachusetts, where I am, with Elizabeth Warren, so that's understandable. But yeah, Bernie, I mean, Bernie is in it for the long haul. I think he's there to keep people honest. And I know that people are like, oh, he should drop out. And they're like, okay, but Joe Biden might not survive to the general election. Okay, we need to at least have someone viable to go up against the orange man. You know? So
I don't know. I really I'm not really on board with the whole like Joe Biden. Like both of them are very old, and like it's like literally they're around like the standard like the death whatever, like when most men die, basically approaching their 80s. And so that doesn't make them like mentally impaired or subpar cognitively, but it is a kind of a weird thing to be that old in this like demanding situation. So yeah,
we'll see how they do. I mean, I'm not sure what they had to inject Joe Biden with to get through that last debate, but maybe it's not very good for your health in the long term. The Orange Man has trouble too. You know, the Orange Man is very old as well, and you know that Donald Trump has not led a clean life. I mean, the dude has lots of history of lots of things. So we'll see how, you know, I mean, at this point in this world, anything could happen. All right, let's just be ready. All right.
Yeah.
Speaking to you from the bunker.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what else to say about it. I mean, it's the Democratic Party is goofy. I mean, it seems like it's just always like a clown car when it comes to like elections. And last time you had Hillary Clinton, whose like husband is a rapist, and she has limited charisma, to say it lightly. So, yeah, it is what it is. That's the Democrats for you. But the other thing is like, kind of people on the left have to like recognize a certain kind of hunger for mediocrity in the Democratic Party. Like somehow like there's a legitimate kind of populist need for mediocrity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I mean, now trust me. When Pete came on the scene, I was like, oh man, Pete's gonna be trouble, because I felt like he fit all those type vibes. Plus, he had the gay thing happening, which is like the identity politicking, and I was like, oh man, this might actually be like a Pete thing. How could this happen? You know, with Sanders coming back from last time around, and I really didn't know. I did not expect Biden to come back in the way that he did. And I don't think that
he really, you know, was literally like pulled out of the trash can or something.
He was doing very poorly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Even in places where he was polling very well, which could be a convenient explanation if you looked at all the states and you looked at all the numbers and you looked at the polls leading up to Iowa. You would say, oh man, like it seemed like he was going to do a lot better than this. At least he was going to be third or maybe even second in some estimations, and just his campaign just collapsed. So I was curious as to who these people were that were voting for Biden. How much crossover and interference in the open primaries were you getting from people on the right or center right wanting to mix it up with the Democrats and see who was going to go up against Trump? I mean, I really don't know. I'm not willing to blame anything like that. What I will say though is that the UN gauges primary like exit polls as having a margin of error of approximately 4% based on where the placement of the exit polls are, etc. And some of the exit polls in some of the states do indicate election fraud because they're 2-3 times higher than the margin of error that the UN would typically see out of exit polls.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but if you look at where the votes are coming off of and where they're going to Biden. They're coming off of Sanders and they're going to Biden. And before it was just Biden and Sanders, they were coming off both Warren and Sanders consistently and going to Biden.
Yeah.
So question marks, guys. Who's running the primaries? I mean, it's not like this is an impossibility. Okay?
Yeah.
Do we live in a democracy? No. Like, let's just get used to it, right? Is it going to matter? I don't know. I don't know if it's going to even matter now.
Yeah, it's whatever it is. It's kind of a rusty old Biden. So the other thing I'd like to mention, and this was for some reason completely buried by all the headlines, but America's like withdrawal from Afghanistan. So recently I read that the number of Afghan soldiers who were killed fighting the Taliban, is 50,000 people, which is huge. So for
American soldiers?
No, Afghan.
Of Afghani soldiers that fought the Taliban.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
That is a lot of people.
Yeah, so $3 trillion basically spent on this war. I mean, I forget what the American casualties are, but I think they're around like 2,000. Not sure.
Okay. Yeah, that makes more.
So,
Yeah, that makes way more sense. Yeah.
so Trump spoke with the head of Taliban on the phone, and at the end of it, I thought, is he going to praise him? And he actually did. He said the Taliban fought terrorists, and who they fought is like the Islamic State from establishing there.
Yeah.
So they're continuing to do acts of terrorism, basically, and sounds like once the withdrawal happens, I mean, they're likely going to take over the country again. And as part of
the Taliban.
yeah,
Yeah.
and basically, the agreement said, like, for now, that the Taliban should not engage in extreme violence. So basically, under the current agreement, they can engage in violence, just maybe don't make it ultra violence. So effectively, I mean, the futility of this thing is amazing, and I think that, like, basically Afghans are fucked because likely, like, the Taliban is gonna take over everything in a bloody, horrible confrontation.
I mean, I don't want to sound like an asshole here, but if you're living in Afghanistan, you're already sort of fucked.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, how much more can you really be fucked? I mean, honestly.
I mean, it's a kind of a situation where when the war started, and that was like the first time I remember having a political position of being against it in high school. I mean, I of course kept it shut in my conservative high school, just kind of kept it on the down low. But
you had a conservative high school?
Yeah.
Oh, that's weird.
Yeah, Cincinnati is very conservative. Like the
I had no idea.
Well, suburban Cincinnati, yeah.
Gotcha. Interesting.
Basically, yeah, it's one of the most conservative suburbs. And yep. So I don't know what to say here. It's just bizarre to see the president of America, like, speaking with the head of the Taliban and, like, praising them. But I wonder if, like, I wonder if Afghanistan should have been split into different countries, or into, like, a confederacy, and then, like, invest massive amount to local warlords to control their space. But that's challenging to do in and of itself. And, well, anyway, the last thing I'll say is that the same guy, Khalilzad, who was, like, an ambassador under Bush when the Afghan war started, is now, like, wrapping it up under Trump, because he's the one Afghan guy in the U.S. diplomatic service. And I mean, he's not to say that he's some sort of an affirmative action hire, but it's just strange that he's like, yep, now we're kind of wrapping up this baby.
So they ended combat operations, and they're just removing, like, the last of the troops. Is that what they're doing?
Yeah, they made an agreement with them that the Taliban will not engage in basically extreme violence, and they're basically gearing up toward withdrawal. Yeah.
So here's something strange about Donald Trump that I actually kind of like. I like that Donald Trump is all about pissing people off, right? Like, that's kind of funny to me. The man himself is fucking horrible, and I hate him. But the Orange Man himself has prevented a conflict with Iran. He has pulled troops out of Syria, and he has now pulled troops out of Afghanistan. Since when have we had a president actively ending conflict?
There is some truth to it, but he's waving his dick with Iran, and
well, I know that he's doing that. But look, these assassinations, things like that, those things are going to happen regardless of a president. Okay? Those strikes are going to happen regardless, because geopolitics is unfolding throughout many, many different channels all over the world all the time. Okay? So yeah, I get it. Okay, he's a high level guy, and they wanted to kill him, and okay, fine. And it was in Iraq, and it pissed off a bunch of Iraqis, and yeah, it was a dick wag. Okay, got it. But nothing else. Okay, like they responded, nothing happened. There was no further response. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah. I mean, there is some truth to it. I mean, he is an isolationist, so he doesn't want to pull out in this instance. Yeah, so I mean, there is some truth to it. So I guess we're coming to an end of this stream, and I guess the last thing I'll show is my coronavirus pantry. This is what everybody's gearing up for, supplies. So yeah, I have this. I don't know if anybody's watching us from the outside of the States, if they're familiar with the White Castle sliders. Nobody wanted that shit at the store. Half the shelves were empty, but nobody wanted to feast on, on this kind of, on tiny burgers. Even in spite of their high protein content of 16 grams. So there's that.
Wait, do you have to keep those in the freezer?
In like the regular, in just refrigerated. So then there are these pitas with which I make sandwiches. Once again, I went to the store. All the bread was gone, except for these pitas, which I consistently eat. So I just eat shit that people won't even buy when they're facing death.
Yeah.
So there are these pitas that I make sandwiches with this cheese with no taste, Mexican 4 cheese, and also like, again, all the meat was gone.
Cheese with no taste,
except for this shit, like these. So that's what I'm gonna sustain myself on, and of course the jammers, Kool-Aid jammers.
Nice.
What are you stacking up on?
I have a bunch of dry goods in my basement, tucked over in the corner, and mostly it's canned things, shelf stable things. I managed to get a couple of Amazon pantry orders in before the shit really hit the fan. And beyond that, I'm not super worried about it. I have like some oatmeal, I have some beans, I got some lentils, I got a lot of good stuff, I'm not really worried about people hoarding food. I'm more concerned with like what people are going to do when the shit hits the fan, when people start flipping out, if there's like, realistically, martial law being declared, what is that going to mean for most Americans? Like, okay, like you have a curfew and you don't get to do all the fun regular things that you shouldn't be doing already. I don't know what's going to happen, man.
One thing I'm jealous of is kind of like coronavirus tenderness. There is all this sort of reports of people having a lot of sex and buying sex toys during quarantine. And it's not specifically the act of sexual release that makes me very tender and lonely, but it is a kind of the close connection with the honey when all of us are a bit weirded out by having been confronted with history as opposed to just hearing about explosions in Afghanistan. So we do need a multi-dimensional relationship with the opposite sex, at least I do. But sort of, I guess, the hierarchies don't work in our favor. And that's one of the things I hate about Peterson and Stefan Molyneux, of reducing everything to some fucking hierarchies and schemas and all this shit, and like making everything so abstract with the ladies. Where's
It's not.
this?
It's not that abstract. It doesn't need
Yeah.
to be that abstract.
No, we need romance. We need fucking melancholy Leonard Cohen songs, and this is what I have in my vehicle. And this is what I'll have tomorrow on my date with coronavirus again. I'm sure driving it around in darkness, which is what I do. My friends, thank you for watching. I do
Oh,
want to
you don't
say
want to. You don't want to do the Doomsday Prepper thing.
probably not, because
Oh,
I'm
okay.
not. Yeah, I'm not sure like what I would say so much.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But yes, I guess like in conclusion, I'll just say like some obvious things. The virus came to us because of our sins. I am partly to blame because I'm uncircumcised. It's been clearly stated in the Bible and the holy text as to that flop of skin had to go, but people have defied the Lord, and now we're reaping the wrathful consequences. It started there, and it's being spread by pigeons, by resentful pigeons. Oftentimes, we sit on a bench, and we say, "This pigeon, I would never fuck it because of the length of its feathers." They get very self-conscious about it, and they grow bitter. And once they have opportunity to kill us, they do so with staring and like with rubbing themselves against door handles and shit. And we really need to wash our hands for that reason. Brian, any other thoughts? Okay.
Wash your hands.
Right. That's we all agree. There could be a lot of things on your hands. Duty, like DNA of somebody who's been murdered. So coronavirus is just one of the. And saying like happy birthday twice. Remember that. So anybody, thank you for watching, everyone. Stay safe. Be well mentally and physically.